Welcome to Female Fluence. We are a place of women empowering women. This is a safe environment where females are not judged nor afraid to flourish. My goal is to help you live an energized life of balance, whether as a mom, a wife, or in your profession. It is time to have self-worth and self-compassion. Live in the present moment and surround yourself with only healthy connections. So join me, Promash Shur, a woman empowerment life coach, an educator, and a mother of three, to help take you on a journey of true identity and inspiration. Life is a roller coaster of highs and lows. Just when you feel we're on top of the world, something unexpected can come crashing down on us, whether it's a sudden layoff or the breakup of a marriage. In those moments, it's natural to feel overwhelmed and paralyzed by the weight of our circumstances. However, it's how we respond to these challenges that truly defines our character. Regardless of the curveballs life throws our way, it's essential to acknowledge and accept the reality of our situation. Only then we can begin the journey of healing and progress. Even if the loss isn't physical, we often find ourselves navigating through the stages of grief, grappling with denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and eventually acceptance. But amidst the chaos and pain, there lies an opportunity for growth and transformation. During these changing times, we discover our inner strength and resilience. We are forced to confront our deepest fears and insecurities, prompting us to reevaluate our priorities and redefine our notion of success. Joining us today is Danielle Cobo, a former Fortune 500 senior sales manager, renowned for her ability to empower individuals to overcome obstacles and thrive personally and professionally. During her own journey of resilience, Danielle has become a beacon of hope for those facing adversity. Her latest book, Unstoppable Grit: Break Through the 7 Roadblocks Standing Between You and Your Goals, offers invaluable insights and practical strategies for navigating life's challenges with grace and determination. Welcome, Danielle. Welcome to Female Fluence. Thank you for being on my show today.
I am thrilled to be on the show today. Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Of course. So we're going to start by, if you can begin with sharing your story. And I know you're very resilient and you're strong today, but how were you? Were you always this person? Maybe take us back starting from your childhood.
I believe that a lot of my grit and resilience it's innate within me, but it's also been nurtured within me throughout my years. So when my mom and my dad divorced when I was 2.5 years old, my earliest memories were actually being taken from my father. So my mom actually took me from my father. I didn't tell him where I was. I grew up thinking that he abandoned us, that he didn't want me as part of his family, and that he chose another family. I didn't know at the time that my mom actually took me from my father. So it was a really confusing time for most
Yeah.
of my life. In the early years, I felt like my mom was the part of my mom that was such a beautiful part of her was I saw her as being this resilient mother who was a single mom, who was going to school full time, who was working as a server. And I got to see her go from having absolutely nothing, where we lived in a 1 bedroom apartment. My bed was in the living room and we didn't really have much, to rising up the corporate ladder and becoming a regional sales director for one of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies in the world. So, in a lot of ways, my mom and I's relationship was very beautiful, but it was also very broken, because, and the beauty was, I got to see, she really role modeled for me tenacity and drive and motivation and resiliency. The brokenness is there was a lot of manipulation, and I didn't know for many years that my mom actually took me from my father. I didn't learn that until actually I was 15 years old when I met my father. He just showed up at school one
That's
day.
a long time to have that in your heart, that kind of pain, especially like that, all those, the childhood and like the preteens.
It really was. I mean, it was really hard during, the things that we don't really think about necessarily. Father-daughter dances were always really hard for me. I always felt left out. I felt like was very abandoned, and it caused a lot of unworthiness in my life where I felt like I wasn't worthy of unconditional love. I felt like I wasn't good enough for many. I felt like I was always trying to prove to people that I was worth loving for many years of my life. And so it's taken a lot of therapy, a lot of reflection, and a lot of work to get to the point where I'm at today.
Well, you should be so proud of yourself that you were able to take that, all that pain, and shift it into something positive in your life.
Yeah, but that takes work. It
It
doesn't come
does. It
easily.
takes a lot of work, and not everyone can do it. They can spiral down the wrong way instead. So, that's incredible. Now, what happened, I believe 2022, when you felt like your world collapsed?
Yeah, so it was in 2020 where, like many of us, 2020 was a year of shift and change and uncertainty. Well, my year started off with 2019. My husband had just served a year deployment. So he was deployed in Iraq for a year. At the time that he left, our twins were 1.5 years old. They were sleeping in cribs and they were drinking out of bottles and they were learning their first words. And all of a sudden, he comes back and they're 2.5 years old, and he's come back from a war zone as a Black Hawk pilot in the US Army to 2.5-year-old twins who are formulating complete sentences, who have opinions, who are throwing temper tantrums, who are sleeping in toddler beds. So it was a really big shift for us in 2020 when he returned home because we were trying to find a way to navigate being a united front as a family.
Right.
And then, right as we started to find our rhythm and our groove, on March 8th, I actually lost my mom, and I lost my mom to suicide. So the news of the devastation of losing somebody in that way had really shaken me in a lot of different ways. And as I was trying
Had
to,
you healed some of the situation that you had, like the conflicts and the feelings that you had with her before this, or no?
no, unfortunately not. So my mom and I, like I said, we had a very beautiful but also very broken relationship. And my mom and I had been estranged for 13 years. So there was a lot of times where there's a lot of years where we didn't talk, but she was still my mom. She's still somebody
Of course.
that I loved, but she suffered from mental illness. And to know that she was in such pain that she felt the only way out was to take her life, that brought me into a lot of those bargaining in
Yes.
the stage of grief of that what if. Well, what if we had repaired things? What if we had repaired a relationship? Would she still be here today? There was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of shame associated with it. Um, so it definitely, and it's still something that I think about today. I also think about today. Today is actually the 4-year anniversary that we're recording this, but I think about, well, what if we repair the relationship? But then at the same time, I also know there's a reason why we didn't talk, and it was just because of a lot of the mental illness that was out of her control.
Well, now I know there was another situation that happened that
Yes.
when it was that you lost your job. Was that in the same year?
Yeah, so right after, so March 8th happened, then I'm trying to find a way to cope and
To
heal with
heal
losing
and
my
cope.
mom. March 13th, a week later, the
Oh,
world pandemic hit. So, as many of us remember, we remember that day where everything shut down. And my mom lived in California, I lived in Florida. So, I'm trying to I'm trying to tend to her things, and I'm not even able to get any closure with it because I'm not able to go through her things. I'm not able to really provide her a celebration of life because the world is shut down.
yeah.
And then a month after that, the company that I had been with for 7 years was acquired by another organization, and the work environment became very, very, very toxic.
Toxic.
Very toxic. So I ended up leaving the organization. And for the first time in my career, I was unemployed, which was a big shift for me because not only was my life shifting personally, but professionally as well. And I had tied so much of my identity to my career, to my paycheck and my sales awards and my job titles, that through these experiences that all happened within a 6-month period, I felt so lost and so confused, and I felt like I didn't know who I was.
That year was a very difficult year for everybody. It was just the basic stuff of not being able to leave the house, seeing relatives, but everyone else at the same time had so many additional problems that they had to navigate their life through. So it made it 10 times worse. So yeah, I can't even imagine how you survived all of that. So when you lost your job, what was your initial reaction? Right? Like, how did you learn to like pick yourself up and then try to like job hunt, and kind of what steps did you take to rewire your brain and change your negative mindset and care for yourself so you can build yourself back up?
Yeah, well, to clarify, I was actually in a position where I had a toxic employee on my team that had made accusations about me that were inaccurate. And so the company chose to demote me. And in that moment of demotion, they gave me a choice. You can either demote into a sales
Or
rep
you could
role or
leave.
you can leave.
Oh,
I
okay.
chose to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
I
And in
would
this,
choose to do the same thing.
yeah. And but I wasn't just one of the managers who was going through some of this toxic culture. It ended up being that several managers were going through these odd investigations, and there was multiple managers that ended up leaving the organization. We're talking managers that had been with the company for 25, 30
Oh,
years
that's a
that
shame.
ended up leaving. And and it was really just the way that this new company handled certain situations. It did not align with the culture of what the company used to be. And
Used to be.
the company before had an amazing culture. I thought I was going to retire with the company. And this person that made these accusations ended up getting fired in the long run anyways. And was on a performance warning. So I go into the whole story in the book, Unstoppable Grit. But that moment of leaving the organization and that decision was a very difficult decision to make, because I could have stayed and I could have gone to a sales rep role, but why would I want to stay with a company that didn't fully believe in me
Yes.
or that would put me in that position? So I left and I started initially to look for a job, but I wasn't in the right mental capacity to look for a job. I felt like I was so lost and confused that trying to put myself out there and look for a job, I was too bruised and broken at that time. So I actually gave myself some time to, for the first time, gave myself some time to like relax, spend some
Good.
quality time with my kids. And what happened is as I was going through this time of not working, I really had a lot of time to go through self-reflection. And I remember the moment of writing my mom's obituary. I started to really think about, like, well, what does she want people to say about her at her celebration of life? And then it made me start thinking about, like, well, what do I want people to say about me at my celebration of life? And how do I want to be showing up
Your legacy, right?
yeah, as a legacy? And so I wrote my own obituary, and I wrote it from the perspective of a colleague, and I wrote it from the perspective of a family member, and thinking about, like, what do I want my kids to say about me at my funeral? And it's an odd exercise, I know, for a lot of
You know,
people.
I actually heard of people doing that, and I've heard that's actually one of the best exercises to discover your why and your purpose, because you're kind of working backwards. You want to see at the end of the day when you're gone, what did you want to do for this world? What do you want people to say about you? It's what actions did you take to make differences in other people's lives? It is a strange exercise, but I totally think it's a really good one. And if everyone took the time to actually do this and reflect on it, it would really change your perspective.
It does. The more time that we reflect on who we are and what we want, the more self-awareness we have, the happier we're going to be. And so that exercise, really what came out of it was, the legacy that I want to leave is, I want to leave a positive impact on the world. I love sitting down with somebody and seeing somebody, the spark within them that they don't see within themselves, and pulling it out of them, and then just seeing them thrive afterwards. I've worked with a lot of people who have made major career changes, who have pursued relationships, who have pursued businesses just based off of conversations. And so I started to really think about, instead of tying my identity to a job title, what would it look like if I started to tie my identity into the positive impact that I can make? And so, as I was looking for a job, I started to post on LinkedIn just inspirational quotes and inspirational messages. And I started to just show up consistently, thinking that, hey, if I position myself as a leader and I position myself as somebody who's adding value, it's going to open up the doors to more opportunities.
Of course.
And it did, just not in the way that I anticipated. I thought I was going to be getting a corporate job, but what happened is so many people started to reach out to me and ask me for coaching and advice, that it ended up starting this business of being a career coach and being a keynote speaker. And then I started a podcast and wrote a book, and all of this happened within let's say about 3 years.
That is a wonderful story, and I feel like this was supposed to be your purpose, like, this was supposed to happen to you. You were supposed to, either leave your job and somehow change your direction because you needed to make a difference in other people's lives. So,
Yeah, I hope so. I believe that I'm a I'm a I'm a believer and a woman of faith, and so I believe that when God's closing one door, He's just redirecting us to a door that's greater for us. He's just opening the door to something better.
yep, that's exactly what happened. Your door opened wide.
Well, it shut really
Um,
hard and then
yes.
opened a wide one.
So can you also teach us the three steps to, I mean, you mentioned a little bit, but to like overcome emotional burnout and face it head on? Because it's at those times how we react is, proves how we can move on.
hmm Yeah. So in the book, I talk about the 7 signs of emotional burnout. And I'll go ahead and kind of share 3 of them right now. One of them is like that self criticism. So that's when we get into a part where we start criticizing everything about ourselves. And when we start criticizing everything about ourselves, then we also start criticizing other people as well. So self criticism is a sign of emotional burnout. A second sign of emotional burnout is escapism, is when we start to escape. We want to escape from whatever we're doing. We may not want to be around people, or we want to escape certain activities that we used to enjoy doing.
Isolation.
Isolation or wanting to be away from everybody. Yep. And then the third out of the 7 signs is overwhelm. It's that feeling like we're constantly overwhelmed. It's that kind of like pit in your stomach that you get. The best way that I describe it is when let's say you are scared of heights and you're being put in a position to go bungee jumping
Oh God.
and you're standing at the ledge and you feel that pit in your
Oh, that's
stomach.
horrible. That horrible
Yeah,
feeling.
I'm terrified of heights. And
Right when you're
so
standing on that edge, right?
yeah, I've never been bungee jumping. I
No,
have
I
no
haven't
plans on doing
either.
it because I'm terrified of heights. But the best way I can describe it is that being an absolute fear where you have that pit in your stomach, that's another sign of emotional burnout. And so it's important to recognize when we are emotionally burnt out, because emotional burnout can play into a lot of factors of how we show up, or how we show up at work, how we show up at home. A lot of times when we are in this emotionally burnout state, we get into the blame, shame, and complain type cycle. And that's not serving us, and it's not serving anybody that we're around.
Yeah, and it's just like a very negative attitude about everyone, everything, your surroundings. It's negative energy. You ruminate through the thoughts of the what ifs, and that can cause a lot of distress, lead to feelings of guilt and shame. Is there anything that we can do to avoid that feeling of regret? Because that is, the worst feeling. And then you keep going through and just thinking about what you said, what you did, what you should have done instead. And it can kind of take over your like soul, you know?
Yeah, a lot of times it's like we can't in those it's really hard when you've got ruminating thoughts that are consuming your mind and you're thinking about all the what ifs. And I start to think about, instead of thinking about what we should have done or could have done, like instead of shoulding on yourself, start thinking about what you get to do next time. Because the reality is we can't change the past, but we can change how we move forward, and we can change
Mhm.
the approaches that we take next time. So maybe we're going to approach a conversation differently. But I do believe that, like, with my mom and my relationship with her and the ups and downs that we've had, everything does happen for a purpose. I don't believe that, as much as I would love to have my mom back here today, I do believe that losing her has played an integral role into how I am today and the person that I am tomorrow. And me sharing her story will hopefully help other people see that their
Right.
life is worth living. And if it saves somebody else's life, then I get to leave her legacy through it. So instead of
Yes.
thinking about, you know, the what ifs, I get to think about how can I change that situation that was completely out of my control, and how can I turn it into a good.
I love that. I think realistically, it has to do so much to do with perspective. The moment we change our perspective about the situation and we realize that, okay, that's how, like you're saying, this is what happened with your mom, but now, you couldn't, there was nothing out of in your control. You were a child. She had health issues and mental illness. And so now, if you can kind of make a difference with someone else that's going through the same thing, then you have exactly like you said, you have made her legacy live on. I think
Mhm.
that's incredible, very powerful. Now, let's discuss about our how our moods can be directly influenced by what we wear and how we look. A little bit more fun of a question. I know the
Yeah.
questions have been really deep as we started off. So, studies have shown that colors can boost our self-esteem and can play a role in creative positive mental shifts. Can you tell us more about this? Like, because I know like if you wear those you wear sweats all the time and like dark colors, and that's going to be like your mood will be in that same way, reflecting what you're wearing. So if you can kind of elaborate on that.
Absolutely. So I love this topic because I don't get to talk about it very much, but I do believe in dressing the way that you want to feel. Hey, there are times where you want to be in big baggy sweats and you want to be curled up on the couch wearing baggy sweats, a baggy sweatshirt. You want to have like your pint of Jerry Garcia ice cream curled up on a blanket with Netflix. I get it. I'll binge watch Suits and I'll love it. And then there's other days where maybe you're not really feeling motivated. You can also, if you're not feeling motivated, but you know that you still need to show up, you still need to show up at home, you need to show up at work, dress the way that you want to feel. So in those moments, take the extra step to get ready in the morning. I get ready every single morning, whether I am on camera, whether I see people or not. I still always do my hair. I still do my makeup because I do it for me, because I
Yes.
know that how I show up for myself is how I'm going to show up for others. And more often than not, if I'm going to be on stage, I'm probably going to be wearing a form-fitting dress. I'm going to be wearing my Louis Vuitton heels that have the red bottom soles because red is a powerful color. And I'm going to feel confident in those moments. But you'll often find me on the baseball field watching my kids, cheering my kids on. I'm going to be wearing light sneakers so that I can run and chase after them, and hair in a ponytail with a hat on. And because I want to be comfortable and I want to be
Yes.
sporty. So, I do believe that you can dress the way that you want to feel. If you're feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, blue is a very calming color. That's why you'll notice when you go to hospitals, most doctors, most nurses are
Oh,
wearing blue.
that's true.
And then if you think about if you're going in for an interview, wearing red is a very powerful, confident color. If you are feeling a little down and depressed, yellow is a very happy color. In fact, one of my friends was just kind of having a little rough week. So I stopped by her house and brought her yellow flowers because it's a very bright, happy color.
Yeah, that's true. And I love what you said earlier too, how you said show up for yourself, how you want to show up for others, because that's taking the first step, because you can't make an impact if you're not showing up for yourself. You're going to kind of go to work and you will be invisible. And that's how it's going to display in your day as you work throughout the day, right? So
Hmm.
that's very good. Now, this is the other thing. We are guilty. This is from your book. We are guilty of mindless entertainment on social media. I love this sentence in your book. I was guilty of defining success based on what I saw online rather than what it truly meant to me. This is a chapter in your book called Reclaiming the Narrative Using Your Remote Control to Influence Your Emotions. Wow, I just love this. How did you take control of the social web and free yourself from being sucked into that social web vortex, entering cyberspace burnout? Because as we all know, this can happen really quickly. You're bored, you're sad, you sit there, you're like, I'm just going to check out one thing. One thing leads to another, to another, to another. And before you know it, it's been an hour, 2 hours. Now you're really in there and you've looked at, oh, this person's on vacation, they're having a great time, she looks amazing, oh, I look, I've gained all this weight, and and it just kind of spirals. And then after you put down the phone, you feel 10 times more depressed, more negative than you had before the phone. So if we can kind of dive into this topic, because I know it's a big one and it's so common with everyone right now.
Oh my gosh, this topic is so fun because It's, I remember the moment where my husband was deployed. And so I was laying, Friday, Saturday nights, I was at home by myself. My kids were asleep because they were two at the time. So they were asleep by 7:30. So Friday and Saturday night, I felt like I was being connected to my friends by looking at social media and looking at their
Yeah.
profiles. Well, then it spiraled into how-to videos and it spiraled into how to contour. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to contour while my husband's gone. And then it spiraled into how to get the best abs. And so working out. I'm like, okay, well, good. This is like
Or
good,
like
healthy.
I know you had said like reorganizing. So now like every single cabinet, every pantry, it looks like Pinterest and you've reorganized your whole house.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a beautiful pantry. But that moment when I started to see, and I caught myself the other day doing this too. So I remember this moment where I started to see these home organizing uh videos that started to pop up. And I remember this moment where I was like, I'm going to organize my pantry. It's going to look Pinterest worthy.
Yeah.
And I remember after a long day of work, I worked all day. I do the bedtime routine with my kids. I'm exhausted, but I'm determined to get this done. I'm sitting on the floor with everything in my pantry taken out and onto the floor. And I remember looking up at this project and going, why did
Why
I
did I
do
do
this?
this? Yeah.
I created busyness in my life. I didn't need to do it. I could have waited till my husband was home to do it. I could have gotten help doing it. Why was I choosing to do it the 1 year that he was deployed and I was already exhausted?
Yeah.
And so, what I talk about in the book is taking the remote control of your life. And so, you can go on social media, and in those moments where you're feeling like you're getting sucked into the vortex of social media, you can unfollow or you can mute people. So, you can actually go to the three dots on the right hand side and you can mute people where you won't see their images for 30 minutes or 30 days. Um, so I did this the other day. I started to notice that I was shopping more. I was like, ooh, I'm buying things I don't necessarily need to buy. It's just because some
And the
influence.
problem is if you have an Alexa, right, in your house, you just mention like, oh, I could use new sneakers. Next thing you go on Instagram, every single thing is a sneaker just popping in your face. It's amazing
Yeah.
how this works because now you're like, oh, well, it's just right here. Let me just purchase it.
I'm going to tell Alexa that I need a new kitten so that my husband gets kitten videos popping up. Our cat recently passed away, so I'm like dying for another cat. I just want another cat. Um, so yeah, so you take the remote control of your life. So I started to notice the other day I was buying things frivolously that I really did not need. So I
Really?
started to unfollow them. I started to mute all their profiles. And then I said, okay, well, that's kind of like removing or deleting. Then start to go to profiles that are motivating, inspiring, empowering, and start marking those ones as favorites. And then if there's a particular profile you like that's got a lot of motivational videos, go onto that profile and just like a bunch of their posts. And you're telling the algorithm that you want to see more of their
Changing
posts in
it,
your
right?
newsfeed. So if you ever watch the show, it's on Netflix. It's called The Social Dilemma, and it's a documentary, and it's about these different high level executives that worked for Facebook and Pinterest and Instagram. And they talk about the algorithm specifically and how it influences how it influences our mind and like our own happiness. And so that's kind of what sparked the idea to put that in the book.
I think that's a great advice if everyone just takes the time to kind of clean that up and change it because I mean what I do sometimes is I look at baby stuff because baby stuff is just so happy and cheerful. So that's if I'm having a rough day, that's the first thing I see. I'm like, okay, and I it just shifts your mood. But the other thing I've done is I've actually I mean, I put screen time for my children, but I've actually put it on for myself. So it's like I have 15 minutes on social media that's allowed and it gives me an alert. So then when I see that alert, I feel guilty. I'm like, oh, I can't spend any more that time is only designated for that. I have so many other things to do. And it's just a reminder because that just spiraling up and down, you can do that forever.
Yeah.
We can
And
talk about this forever.
I have a word shift. I have a word shift. So I study neurolinguistics. And so it's a word shift for you. Instead of saying I can't watch this anymore, say I choose to spend my time doing other activities.
Oh, I love
So
it.
it will take away the guilt. Instead of I can't, I choose to spend my time doing other activities.
I really like that. That's really it really changes the power of words is incredible, right?
Yeah. And in the book, I talk about the differences between obligations and opportunities and have to versus get to, because I'm a big believer that the words that we choose will influence how we approach our day to day and our
Yes.
happiness and
And I like
fulfillment.
actually in your book too that I mean, I have a vision board, but I like how with the words that you can describe about yourself. So that it's like, and it's right there, if you ask others or yourself or whatnot, and you can have, I mean, you can explain.
Word cloud. So yeah, so right before I wrote my obituary, I went on social media and I was feeling so lost that I just didn't know who I was. And I was like, well, I wonder how other people perceive me. And what do people see in me that maybe I don't see in myself? So I went on Facebook and I said, if you can describe me in 3 words, what would it be? And people started to flood the comments. I was not anticipating, but the comments that came in was such a boost in confidence and showing me, wow, I actually really am a special person. And how is it that other people are seeing these qualities in me that I'm not seeing in myself? That was an eye-opening experience.
Yes.
And so empowering, driven, motivating, and inspiring, gritty was one of the words that popped up. And so I took all of those words and I put them into a program that creates word clouds, and it puts all these words together, and then you can make that into a picture. And so anytime that you're experiencing self-doubt, or you're experiencing sadness or depression, or any negative emotions about yourself, it's a great opportunity to go to that word cloud. And those are the words that other people describe
That's how they
you.
see you. I think
Mhm.
that's a great idea. I'm definitely going to do it, because that's a constant reminder. Like, okay, I'm having a bad day, but this is actually how people perceive who I am, and that's what I've done. So that's how I'm perceived. So I'm gonna do this word cloud project. Okay, so the next thing to talk about, according to the report of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you stated that 73% of civilian workers have access to paid vacations. However, this was shocker. Approximately 50% of American workers, that's half of the entire labor force, do not take vacations for one reason or another. And that has a huge impact on burnout for both the employees and the companies that they work for. There was a time, I think, in your career that you had like accumulated 32 days of vacation time that you had not used. So a vacation, I feel like it's really good for you. Like it rejuvenates your mind and body. It lets you spend time with family so you can kind of push the restart button, get back to work, feel really better, and it can really increase productivity at work. How do you think businesses can actually celebrate people who use their vacation and change the narrative that we can succeed by working harder, being the only one working? The more you work hard, the better you're going to be. You're going to move up. And if you're working longer than everyone else, you're better. Because that's what's being told them. People are afraid that either they're going to miss that promotion, they're going to get replaced, the other person who is not taking those vacation days, that person's going to get promoted. So they're really fearful about this.
Yeah, it's so sad that society has put such a emphasis in working hard. And I have strong work ethic and I do work hard, but I can tell you right now that I have a better work ethic and time management after I became a mom of twins. Like if you really want to get something done, I know there's this perception of like, well, when they become a mom, they're not going to work hard enough. Quite the opposite. You want
It's
to get
totally
something
the
done,
opposite.
give it to a mom because she'll get it done, and she'll get it done fast because we now have limited hours that we're going to be working in. And it's not forced. I believe that like our kids should always come first. You got to take care of yourself, then take care of your family, then take care of your business.
Right.
And, the best way that managers and companies can encourage employees to take time off is for the manager to ask each employee at the beginning of the year, okay, let's talk about when is your vacation time this upcoming year? Where are you going? Where are you spending it? What days are you taking off? Let's block it off on the calendar and let's work everything else around it. It's
I
so
think
simple.
that is so simple how you say it. And that way it's organized, it's planned out, and nobody feels that stress. Well, I'm the only one taking a vacation. It's like everyone's in the same boat. Yeah,
And
that's
the
the
manager
perfect way.
communicating too. I'm going to be taking vacation time from this time to this time and
They're
this time to
modeling
this
it,
time.
right?
Yep. You
Exactly.
got to model it and you got to encourage them to do it by being open and having that open dialogue communication.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now let's talk about the gut check. Does how you spend your time reflect your priorities in life? Now, this was such a powerful and thought-provoking sentence or question in your book. I just want that to sink in for a minute, and I want our listeners to really think about this because I mean, I don't think anyone really does this. We are all living on autopilot instead of kind of checking in and saying, wait, everything I'm doing, is this really what reflects my top priorities? Am I really being aligned with what I believe in and love to do? Please share your thoughts, Danielle, about this.
Yeah, so obviously the way that the workforce is set up right now, we're going to spend more time at work than we are with our family. There is just a reality. We work 5 days a week. We work 40 hours a week on average. A lot of times, my kids go to bed at 7:30. I only get a couple hours with them
Yeah.
per day. And so I say you've got to take care, looking at your calendar, how does your calendar reflect your priorities? If you're spending majority of your time, even outside of working hours, doing activities outside of spending time with your family, then that's an opportunity to reevaluate. Between the hours of 5 and 7:30, people know that most often than not, I'm not going to answer my phone. And oftentimes I will leave my phone in another room. So I can obviously, I wear an Apple Watch. So I know if there's an emergency, people can get a hold of me, but I'm not tempted to touch my phone
Right.
when it's in another room. Between 5 and 7:30. And people will ask me, oh, can you be on this particular podcast? Absolutely happy to be on that podcast. And I reserve 5 to 7:30 for my kids. And after 5 o'clock is for my kids and for my family. So if you want to have me on your podcast, I'd be happy to do so during working hours. It's a way that you can say yes and setting boundaries for it.
Setting boundaries, that's the
Mm-hmm.
key.
Yeah, you really got to set boundaries because if we are working around the clock all the time, we're just going to overexert ourselves. We're going to get exhausted. We're going to feel overwhelmed and tired. And then what's going to happen? It's going to create the emotional burnout, then creates a physical burnout. And then we are not showing up as the best person that we possibly can in all areas of our life. And so it's really, really important that we set boundaries. And I'm a believer. I don't like it when people say no is a boundary. It's like you can say yes while setting parameters to it.
Yes, exactly. No, that's great. And I actually, I think everyone should have a time in the day where they do put their phone away or they put it on do not disturb because it's so tempting, whether it's social media or texting friends or answering an email. It's so easy. Back in the days, it's like you had a phone and you had an answering machine. You had a gigantic computer. So if you needed to, there wasn't even an email, but if you needed to do anything on the computer, you actually had to physically go log in, turn it on. But now it's so easy that you could be having dinner with your family and you're sitting there answering emails, texting a friend, checking out social media, and not really being present. So I think if everybody took that time to kind of say, okay, I'm setting a boundary, I have a time that it's either for myself, for my family, for my kids, whatever it may be, but it's away from the phone, from the email. And it doesn't even have to be work related, just all of it, right? Just to
Yeah,
shut that off.
the first hour of your day sets the intention of
Yes.
your
And
day.
what do most people do? I know, especially the teenagers. I have three kids, two of them, 16 and 18. First thing, eyes open. I mean, especially when we're on vacation, I get so mad at them. It's like half eye open and they're checking like who's where on the Snapchat map, what's going on, what have they missed? And I'm like, this is horrible. But adults do it too. That's the first thing
Mhm.
they do. It's like they're on social media
Or they look at emails.
or
So you
they're
think
looking at
about it.
emails.
You
Yeah.
wake up, the first thing you do is you look at emails and you're going, what's coming in? That's creating overwhelm right from the start because
Yes.
you're thinking of all the tasks that you need to do that day versus what would it look like if the first hour of your day was just the day for you. So I notice the days that I wake up, I get ready with my kids, I go for a walk, I listen to music. That day is very different than when I wake up in the morning, I get ready with my kids and I check my phone. Because once I check my phone, I'm thinking
Get
about all
sucked.
the things I have
Yeah.
to do and it's sucked into that
Yep.
vortex. And it's that first hour of your day sets the intention of your day.
Yeah, and you want to have a good intention to start. Um, so the next question, why is embracing feedback? Because you talk a lot about feedback in your book. Embracing feedback, even when it stings, it's essential. And how does it help our self-confidence and while giving us that superpower?
Feedback can be such the greatest gift that we have if it's delivered by somebody that you trust and is doing it in a loving manner. So if somebody comes to you and says, um, let's say, I had this situation the other day where there was somebody that was on their phone during a meeting. And I went up to him and I said, I just want to bring this. Can I share some feedback with you? Always ask for permission first. If
Okay.
you ask for permission first, it sets the tone that it's okay for this environment to take place. And some people may say no, and that's okay. Then you know what? They're definitely not in the right place. Maybe they have something going on in their life right now where having feedback is going to be putting them over the edge. So that's what you say. You always ask for feedback if you can give permission first. So, can I offer you some feedback? Response is yes. Okay. So I noticed you were that on your phone, and the perception of your colleagues is that when you're on your phone in a meeting, you're disengaged. It makes them feel like they're not as important. I know that that's not what your intention is. So there's a difference in saying perception versus intention.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so when you say this is the perception, and I know that that's not your intention. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
So how you phrase it is so important because it's very
Mm-hmm.
constructive, it's not critical, and you're not attacking that person.
No, it's more about what somebody's perception is. Perception is not always reality, but that could be somebody's perception. And at the end of the day, like I know you want to do what's best by the other person. And so I call it also feed forward coaching versus feedback coaching. So next time we're in a business meeting, you might want to consider putting your phone in your purse so then it's not distracting you. And you know what? It's a good reminder for me to do the same. Then you're in the same boat with them too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. I think we all learn a lot from feedback because obviously, whether you're just like you're saying, whether it is, the perception, you're like, oh, well, I didn't realize I was doing that. I didn't realize that people are going to think this way, and it kind of wakes you up because you might not even know what you're doing is what's giving back to other people. Now, unhealthy attachments, what are they? And I know this was another section you had. It was very deep and powerful. If you can break down the different attachment styles briefly, I know there's a lot of them, and how they might impact us.
Yeah, so the attachment styles is basically our upbringing, and it depends on how our upbringing is. If we are in an upbringing that's a very loving environment, we have a very secure attachment style, which is a healthy attachment style. But when we're raised in an environment where there's a lot of um, uncertainty, maybe there's in my environment, it was like somebody was very loving, and then at the same time was very manipulative. They can be disorganized attachment styles. So there's four attachment styles. Honestly, it's off the top of my head. I don't remember them,
It's
which I
okay
should.
if you need to know, everyone, you need to
Yes,
get the
please.
book. It's the only way to find all the details, but you can just
I
briefly talk about it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
So basically it goes into just how our upbringing. I think that the more that we have an understanding of our upbringing and how that affects how we show up today,
Mhm.
that increases our self-awareness. And the more self-awareness that we have, the better we're able to understand what's working in our favor and what changes we can make to be a better person.
So again, we're touching on self-awareness. Self-awareness seems to be such an important, like everything we do, as long as we're aware of what we're doing and we're checking in, reflecting, that makes such a huge impact on how we live our life, right? Because that's it, just
Absolutely.
everything keeps coming back to being self-aware. How you talk to people, how you perceive people, what kind of impact you're making, and so on. Now, I wanted to also talk about you are a military spouse. Let's delve into the significance and strength of military spouses. Your book addresses the misconception that military careers are only pursued as a last resort, and I do agree with you. That is how it seems to be. You personally encountered this stereotype when your husband expressed his desire to leave his sales job and wanted to join the army. He wanted a career that offered a purpose, fulfillment, and a sense of belonging. And I'm sure you had to kind of justify this to everyone. It's like, this is what my husband has decided to do. He wants to do this. This is his, purpose, his dream job, versus, in other jobs you don't have to make that justification. So in that moment, how did you feel about picking up, moving, and making all the sacrifices that military families make? And what advice do you also have to offer for other military wives out there?
Oh, I remember the day that he was first when we were before we got engaged, he was sharing with me that he wanted to join the military. And I was like, absolutely, I'll totally support you. I was a hopeless romantic, totally in love, like, absolutely. And then I remember the day that we got engaged and just that feeling of my stomach and going, wait a minute. I have spent 10 years building my career. I had just bought my first house. The last thing that I wanted to do was to move around the country. And
Yeah.
so I remember just a couple days after we got engaged, having the conversation with him, saying specifically, I understand that I supported you and that I said that I would let you join the military, that I would support you through this process, but I don't want that type of lifestyle. I've worked too hard to get to where I'm at. And so if you don't want to get married, I understand. I'm the one that's changing the dynamics before we even get married. So
Right.
gratefully he said it's okay. He wasn't too thrilled to hear that information, but we still got married. But what I noticed was 8 months after we got married, he just wasn't really happy. He was trying to chase the dollar versus really chasing something that was fulfilling in his life. And so we had the conversation about him joining the military. And funny enough, he was joining the reserves because we move less and have. So I was like, okay, join the reserves. Ironically, right after he joined the army, a year later, we got moved to from Newport Beach, California to Enterprise, Alabama, where the world's largest statue of a bug called the boll weevil is. It's a small little town in Enterprise, Alabama. So can you imagine this Newport Beach blonde
Oh
hair
my,
girl being
you are
put
a
into the
good
small
wife.
town? Yeah, small town. Now we live in Florida, so we've got a happy medium here. But the advice that I would give to military spouses is, you can still have a very successful career while also being a military spouse. Sometimes you have to get very creative on what you do. Sometimes you do more remote work or coaching, but we all have skill sets that can thrive in different environments. And it's just a matter of really being creative and seeing how you can utilize them.
Yeah. And I think I really admire you for the fact that you realize, even though that was not the situation and you kind of try to make it clear to him before you got married, but you could see a change in him. And that's not, as when when we get married and we love someone, we want to make sure that we're both fulfilled, because if they're lacking in their job and they're not happy and fulfilled, they're not going to be the spouse that you want at home, because they will feel depressed, and you can just feel that energy is so low. So as a spouse, you realize, I want my husband to be happy, and if this is really going to make him happy, then I'm going to make that sacrifice. Everything that you've done, very admirable. Let's talk about success. How long will it take to overcome the belief that success only comes from climbing the corporate ladder, getting that six-figure salary, or driving that fancy car, living in that big house? I think it's time for us to really understand that success really means different things to different people. People, I feel like now, really want more time and peace, not just money. And success can be the luxury, of working at home and being able to spend more time for yourself and with your family and your kids. How do you personally define success?
This is something you see, and I see like sometimes we write books for where we were. We write books for the people that we were yesterday in
Mhm.
hopes to get them to where you are today. And this has kind of been an area that's been a little bit of a struggle for me just because, I don't define success more based off of the title that I have. That doesn't necessarily I don't define success on that or sales awards. But what I'm still motivated by money, but the reason being is because money gives me freedom to travel with my kids, to create memories with my
Right.
kids. And the more money I make, the more money I get to give and be in contribution to my community. So, but then my definition is not to make the most money to have the most things. It's the why behind it. It's because I get to create memories for myself. I get to create memories with my family, and I get to create memories for other families by providing them with resources. So I believe that once we are able, when you go through the obituary exercise or the legacy exercise and you start to look at your calendar and you start to look at like that, asking yourself those gut check questions, you can really start to better understand and have the self-awareness to know like what is important to you
Right.
and then align your success based off of that. To me, success is I have kids that are happy and we're all having fun and I'm healthy and happy. That's really as simple as it is.
It's simple, right? It's hard to get there, but it's really, if you think about it, it is simple. If you're healthy, you're happy, you're at peace, and if you can get there, then you're successful.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's been wonderful talking to you today. And just to sum up, you have really empowered us to harness unstoppable grit and unlock the boundless potential within us, enabling us to manifest the lives we've always envisioned. It's time to liberate ourselves from the confines of our comfort zones and embark on a transformative journey of self discovery and fulfillment. Through your enlightening book, here it is, if you want to get it, Unstoppable Grit, Daniel equips us with practical 5-step framework to thrive in adversity, craft career paths that resonate with your passion, identify the 7 signs of burnout, and much, much more. Don't miss out on this invaluable resource. Thank you, Daniel, for gracing Female Fluence with your presence today and being my guest. Is there anything else you would like to share?
When you believe in yourself, others will believe in you as well. So be unstoppable and be the success story you're destined to be.
I love that. I think that's a great way to end the show. Thank you so much again. All the links will be in our show notes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today to Female Fluence. Together, we can influence and motivate other mind-like females. Your job is to feel alive, be in control, and always be true to your own self. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can continue feeling inspired. All the links and notes from this episode will be posted on my website, femalefluence.com. Don't forget to also follow me at Female Fluence on both Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, if you are in need of a woman empowerment life coach to help you identify the barriers that keep you from living the life you seek, please send an email to info@femalefluence.org. Remember, my friends, don't just exist, but live your life to the fullest. I'm your host, Pearl Mashur. Until we talk next time.